After doing custom weapons, it only makes sense to move on to subs, and surprisingly, I had a lot more ideas for subs than even weapons themselves. That being said, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, you know, the YouTube thing. Also, for new specials, I expect a bigger delay between this and the designing specials video, as I plan to either animate some of the demos for it, which will take a while as I suck at animating, or just take some more time to design them in general. As for this video, I want to try and balance it out by having half of the subs be utility or support based, and half of them offensive. With that out of the way, let's begin. My favorite sub in the game is Burst Bomb, and by quite a bit. They're a great all-around sub with so many use cases. They're great for poking, comboing, though that's weapon dependent. They use little ink compared to other subs, and just so many other things. With that, I had a thought. I love the idea of supportive options in games, and Splatoon does have those options, but not usually in the traditional sense, which is perfectly fine. We don't need a dedicated healing weapon or something like that in the game. But what about a sub? Introducing the Splash Bomb, a burst bomb alternative created purely for support, designed after those little carnival fish bags that I've never seen outside of TV shows. This bomb is packed full of a water ink mixture alongside a little plastic fish, because it's cute, really no other reason. When thrown at teammates, it applies a healing and speed boost effect for 2 to 3 seconds, or whatever is more balanced, and can only hit up to 2 teammates at a time. When thrown at enemies, it does a flat damage rate of 20, as it's not really made for combat, yet at the end of the day, throwing water at inklings, or enemy ink for that matter, is typically depicted as not so great. Though lore-wise, water itself isn't lethal on its own, but simply said, inklings' thin skin, salt water, don't mix. Alongside that, the sub has a secondary ability to add on to its support-focused design. The Splash Bomb can clear ink. Let me explain. When thrown at enemy ink, the water in the splash bomb completely clears that section of ink and applies a small bit of team ink, about a beacon's worth of ink. I contemplated for a while if this part was necessary, and I'm still unsure. It seems like a cool idea, but the use cases for it don't really catch me as anything amazing, and I'd probably prefer to just paint. However, having a burst bomb-like sub that heals and paints would be beyond broken. So no matter what, giving this sub good painting it's a no-go. Tell me what you think in the comments, but I really do think either A, it just heals and does 0 painting, or B, it needs a secondary gimmick to balance it out. The explosion of the bomb itself is comparable to a burst bomb, including deploy time, though it doesn't travel as far to try and balance out the fact that design-wise, it wouldn't make sense for this to use a lot of ink. It's mostly water after all. So this will hopefully help prevent spam, as it likely be cheaper than normal burst bombs, which are already super cheap. So decreasing the range just kind of makes sense. I 100% stole that name from a comment. If I can find it, it's on screen now. Thank you for that. When initially designing the C4, I realized I was just kind of making a better ink line, and I didn't really sit well with me. So instead, I designed it after a certain Scottish demolition you may all know and love. Yeah, the C4 is going to be a glorified sticky bomb, and I'm down for it. And before you say anything, no, it's not just a suction bomb with ink line mechanics. I think a more controllable area denying tool sounds like a much more interesting, relatively untapped sub-design in the game. Besides ink mines and I guess just chucking out hitboxes with other bombs, there really isn't anything like this in the game, and I think if it's done right, it'd be a really fun idea. But let's make it happen. The base is a modified suction cup with an array of colored coral attached to it to help it blend in when placed on team ink, as it would act as camouflage. This is balanced out by the fact that it sticks out a bit more on enemy ink. As for use, it is a pretty simple design. Its throwing and sticking attributes would be similar to that of the suction bomb, yet to balance out the extra control you gain, it would have less throwing range or a deeper arc to counteract potential spam. That brings us to the 2 main mechanics of this sub. That is, the choice to detonate the bomb whenever you want, acting in a very similar manner to a sticky bomb, yet on top of that, any player hit with the corals upon detonation will take a sort of bleed damage, akin to stepping on enemy ink. So nothing crazy, but just enough for potential follow-ups. A limitation of the sub is the amount of C4s that can be up at any given time. My first thought was 2 max, due to the smaller sizes of Splatoon stages. Lastly, it has a small arm time between being placed and being able to explode, about 1 second, if not half a second, alongside being able to break like a beacon if shot by players. However, when broken, it would release a small explosion to discourage the action. Something that I was conflicted on with this design was how to activate the detonation. I originally thought just pressing the sub button again, but then you can only have one up at a time, or you need to place both in the same location, since you'd have to use one after the other. Then I thought maybe booyah, but then you might accidentally set off your bombs while booyahing back to a booyah bomb, though nobody actually does that. But then I remembered we have 2 little buttons that go completely unused. So why not make it so one of those detonates the bombs? Boom, easy fix. With all that said, you might just think this is a crappy suction bomb with more steps, but the ability to pick when and where this detonates, alongside being able to place 2 at a time, is well worth the trade-offs. Also, I mostly designed this because of the name, and the fact that a bunch of discount demos running around Splatoon sounds just absolutely hilarious. Get over here! I really wanted to call this sub the Splatpoon, but everyone I pitched it to looked at me funny. So instead we have an objectively less hilarious, but just as awful name of Ink Hook. Yeah, I couldn't decide on a good name, so as I seem to say a lot during these videos, all names are temporary. Regardless, the ink hook is based on those crappy toy bows, spears, harpoons, and grappling hooks. As you may have predicted, this is the second utility tool of the bunch. The hook is essentially a super nerfed Scorpio hook slash like Star Wars force pull, with the players chucking out a little spear with a suction cup at the end, which allows them to pull enemies towards them upon contact. The hook itself would have the range of about a jet squelcher, if not maybe a little less. We want this to be a valid tool, but not overpowered. The hook itself would pop off the enemy about halfway between you and the location you pulled them from. This is another mechanic added for balancing, as it still does its main purpose of helping shorter range weapons like rollers and brushes to close the range gap, without just bringing the target directly to the player, which is fine for like a fighting game. A shooter on the other hand, not so much. This seems like a good middle ground that gives it utility while being more or less balanced. Probably less, it's probably not balanced. Another thing to note is the sub's cooldown. Most subs use a certain amount of ink and that acts as their cooldown. However, with this design it either needs a high ink use to discourage spam or a low ink use matched with a small cooldown. Let's say 2 seconds, if not 1. Which sounds like nothing, but for reference, that's about the time it takes for a suction bomb to explode after hitting the ground. So in all honesty, it's quite a long time. Tell me your thoughts in the comments though. Do you think it needs a cooldown, or do you think using a lot of ink will be enough to balance out its strengths? Why the hell don't we have a bath bomb sub yet? It's literally called a bath bomb. Well, guess I'll have to do it myself. Introducing the Foam Tin, a slightly modified bath bomb that once thrown, sinks into the ink and explodes into a gusher of foamy ink. If it wasn't obvious, the Foam Tin unleashes a mini gusher upon hitting an inked surface. This is probably going to be the simplest, but most versatile sub out of the bunch. With such a seemingly simple idea, this sub opens up a surprising amount of possibilities. The mini gusher would work similarly to its OG counterpart, allowing players to swim up to get to higher vantage points or potentially confuse approaching enemies with a surprise tag. Alongside that, it could also be used as cover, though the actual gusher effect won't be active for more than a few seconds to balance out all its strengths. I want to say between 2 to 4 seconds? 4 seconds is probably too long, so let's meet in the middle and say 3 seconds, but it can be changed if needed. When hitting an enemy, the foam launches them to the top of the gusher and does passive damage, most of which comes from the initial activation, and any damage taken inside the gusher will be very little, probably at max similar to a single burst bomb, so hovering around 20% or so, and the enemy can go into squid form to get out of it quicker. Though, while they're up there, it is possible for you to swim up and attack them before they drop down. It is risky, however, as the enemy can still shoot even if they're on top of the gusher, or they could drop down and then catch you off guard. The weapon's purpose is more or less to be a hybrid tool, kind of similar to torpedoes, where it can be used to locate enemies and attack, or one or the other depending on the situation, yet it doesn't overachieve at either, as to have some semblance of balance. In the same vein, that's what I'm trying to do here with the low damage of the Foam Tin. It's kind of a formality to try and keep it at least kind of balanced considering all its other strengths. Oh wait, did I just make another utility tool? Nah, it does similar damage to the burst bomb, that's good enough. And there we have it, 4 new subs to torment casuals with. Oh wait, I'm a casual player. This video, while fun to do, it was honestly harder to do than the weapons video. I feel subs really need to be strong, but also not too strong, as subs really tend to make or break a weapon. I want more unique subs that weren't just something we've seen before. I could have just made a bunch of bombs that are amazing, with little to no weaknesses, but that's just boring, so I tried to be creative while having them still worth using. Regardless, I might have over-tweaked some, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on them and their stats. Expect a few miscellaneous videos between this and designing specials. As I said earlier, specials are by far the hardest to design and do so effectively, and on top of that, I want to try to make some animations to show off the specials I do make, though we'll see if I can make time for that. It might not be possible. That being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!